I think that really what we want in life, once we know our base needs are met, is to feel loved and valued. And a support system is, I think, what we're talking about, whether it be friends or family or business relationships, business partners, et cetera. The dependence we have on them is to feel like we're valued and we're there to value them. And
Ladies and gentlemen, I always love finding guests for this show, A Mental Health Break, when interviewing someone on that entrepreneur show. There's always the mental health side to running your own business. And I learned a little bit about David's story, some of the things he's overcome and persevered through. So I'm excited to have him share his story today. David, it's great to see you again.
yeah, nice to see you again as well. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, thank you so much for coming back. We had an excellent talk our first time. Stay tuned for that release on that entrepreneur show. But for today, this is the number one podcast for mental health advocates, where we normalize the conversation on mental health each week. And today we are joined by David. And I'll ask you, David, please share your mental health journey from wherever you feel comfortable.
Well, my mental health journey, I mean, I'm a financial planner as my primary role by trade. And I, you know, I think that really, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the top is self-actualization, which is a very privileged place to be in, and at the bottom is base needs. And I think that my mental health and my journey was related to my growing up poor and not really feeling secure with, as I often say when I'm interviewed, being warm, dry, and fed. And so for me, there wasn't too much thought about my mental health when I was worried about feeding myself. And it was only when I started uh, being confident that I'd be fed warm and dry for the rest of my life that I was really able to stop for a moment and say, "Hey, am I happy? You know, what's straining me mentally?" And I have now reached a point where I see the pursuit of being loved and valued is really what motivates me, and what I think actually motivates everybody once they're confident that their base needs are being met. And the that conclusion for me allowed me to look at all of my relationships differently. I could have empathy for anybody in my life and understand that they're going through their own journeys, and maybe some of the friction that I was having was not as personal as maybe my ego would have prior to that realization led me to believe. So that's that. I think that's a long answer to your question about my mental health journey.
I love how you shared there, and I like to touch on this from time to time, where in life you have multiple quadrants. It's just not about only business and success there. You found a way to do a relationship audit, it sounds like, in your life.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. In my late 20s, I had this very strange flash, and it was a flash with me as an 8-year-old or 7-year-old boy talking to my father prior to him leaving my mother and my brother and I on our own, frankly. But I remember talking to him and saying, "Hey, Daddy, why don't you have any friends?" And he said, "Son, when men get old, they don't have friends." And I mean, how heartbreaking is that to hear? It's so heartbreaking. It's so sad for him. But in my late 20s, I woke up one day and realized, uh-oh, I don't have a lot of friends. And I, like a flash, went back to that conversation I had with my father. I hadn't thought of it since then. And I made a really, that's when I started doing the relationship audits, which is, are these people in my life for the right reasons, or are they not in my life for the right reasons? And so I do think mental health, if at base we're really trying to be, feel like we're loved and valued, who we have in our life is a pretty big part of that.
What are some things you do to take care of your mental health on a daily basis? Some things now that you've done this audit of your life, you found a way to stay afloat, you're happy. I see our conversation here with some smiles. How can you help out our audience? Maybe some of your tips will work for them too.
Well, the number one thing I do is exercise.
Yeah, me too.
Um, I, I I deeply believe that and I am by no means not against antidepressants. I have two people in my life that were on suicide watch and needed antidepressants to just have a base of mental health that was, that they could function with. So I'm not in any way discounting the need or merits of antidepressants or those types of drugs, but I think in addition to that, or instead of that, sometimes exercise releases the types of things in your brain that I think antidepressants can also release. The second thing I do is I try to have every day be consciously spent, intentionally spent with people I love and that love me somehow, some way. I make time for that. And that's through my calendaring. I read recently that your calendar doesn't lie, meaning if you look at your calendar every day, that's that's what your life is. Your life is your calendar. And so I actually time block every 30 minutes of my calendar every single day. There you go. Yeah, every 30 minutes of every day. And and on that calendar is exercise. I allot 90 to 120 minutes for exercise. No, I don't exercise 2 hours every day. Some days I do more, but I allot it because it requires you getting to and from whatever your exercise, wherever your exercise. It takes time. I allot time. I make sure I'm conscious of who I'm having dinner with, and who I'm having lunch with. Um, and and this podcast is a 30 minute on my calendar. And so I think that you should build a calendar that has the types of things in your life that provide you with balance.
I absolutely love how you said that. We were smiling because I held up my little time block on my whiteboard. Doing a time audit will show you, and this isn't a you to any specific listeners, even to me, how much time is really wasted. When you put it on the paper and you visualize it, there's something, even I read a book, Fanatical Prospecting, your work can constrict to that time. You'll get more done if you have a set, this is a 30-minute activity. This is something you're going to do, opposed to saying, oh, I'll do it today. Right, we'll get it done later today. That later often doesn't come. I think for me, at least, my stress is lowered when I have a plan for the day. I see some stuff I got going on and I'm not frantic jumping around. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And I have another little story for you that just popped into my head while we're talking about this. There's somebody who's very dear and important to me who is going through a career change. And she left an immigration law practice and is now potentially partnering with a startup immigration firm with a woman who has started this firm. And this person I'm referring to is basically processing all of the casework, and she's overwhelmed because the person who started the firm has opened up the floodgates, if you will, and she's drinking out of a fire hose, if you will, and she was starting work at 7 a.m. and finishing work at night 10 p.m. and waking up in the middle of the night and thinking about cases. And I said to her, and I had some leverage over her for different reasons. And I said, "You're going to infuriate me if you work past 5:30 p.m. again. So if you do that, you're going to have me to answer to." And basically, what it did was it forced her to have this type of balance. I checked in with her 2 days ago, and I said, "How's it going?" Because it's going much better. Said, here's the real question: is less getting done? And the answer was no. It's still all getting done. Why? Because if you work from 8:30 to 5:30 and you work your tail off and you're efficient and you shut it down at 5:30, I'm convinced you're going to get as much or more done and certainly of a higher quality than if you work till 10 o'clock at night. So that would be an example of mental health and happiness. And yes, if you work for a company that requires you to be paying attention and working at 10 p.m. at night, that's a decision you have to make as to whether that's good for your mental health. It's if you're in your past your 30s, it's probably not. If you're in your 20s, whatever, who cares? But if you're in your 30s, probably not.
I can resonate. I was at a big four firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, after college and counting busy season. When you're getting 2 meals per day given to you at work, it just wasn't for me. I had this illusion of what I thought success would be, where I'd get this big salary, this job title, and this corner office. And I shared this story because it just wasn't for me. I had a few tasks of the day and I was finished. I felt my potential was not being tapped into. And again, that working past a certain time, my traumatic brain injury changed a lot my perspective, where I have to be kind to myself, reserve time for me, stop pushing it too hard. I found that if I pushed it for 15, 16 hours, and because I thought I would not get all my work done, I found myself more stressed. And like you said, maybe the quality slipped, where you take those breaks throughout the day, my mental health breaks, and you time block the exercise in, you're eating, you're catching up on some sunlight, maybe you learn that you can get it done in less time because you're treating yourself better. You can't treat your mind like crap and expect the whole system to run. So I absolutely love those. I hope that piece of advice and the second story there helps everyone as well. No matter what job you're in, we can always get more time if we can try to do it, because it's our most valuable asset. It goes so quick. Let's make some more time. Great inspiration there. Thank you for sharing the power of exercise. To addition, medicine may work for some. Exercise may work for some. These are just some things that we can hope helps everyone out there. Now let's switch to a little different area. We're just highlighting a lot about your personal life, prioritizing family, having lunch and meals with people you care about. How does the effects of a support system like that help you and your mental health?
Well, I mean, I had said it earlier. I think that really what we want in life, once we know our base needs are met, is to feel loved and valued. And a support system is, I think, what we're talking about, whether it be friends or family or business relationships, business partners, et cetera. The dependence we have on them is to feel like we're valued and we're there to value them. And will it increase having a support network, increase your probability of making good decisions? Maybe. Um, but I think really at the end of the day, what's necessary there is to feel like you're part of something, that you have a place in the world that is valuable.
That community sense of feeling, can't argue with that. Thank you for sharing that. We've touched on a lot today, and you've given such great value and insight. I love learning about your tips, especially because of exercise. For me, it's at the top of the day, it's time blocked as well. For anyone who's going through a tough time, like you already shared how inspiring that was to overcome, finding yourself, getting centered, what is some advice you can give to other people out there who may be going through a tough time today?
Well, again, I'll reinforce exercise. It's life is habits, and generally, what we do is what we're going to continue to do. And if there's something that we don't do that our lives would be better by doing, it's really hard to start doing that thing because we just fall back into our habits. And there are two things that I think are beyond needing to be proven scientifically. And one is exercise, and the other is meditation.
Yeah, let's talk
Um,
about that a bit.
I don't have a formal meditation practice anymore, but I did have one.
Right.
And my informal meditation practice is I'm an avid snowboarder and mountain biker. And there are especially when I'm backcountry snowboarding, splitboarding, and I'm climbing, I'm completely present. I'm nowhere else. My thoughts are nowhere else in the moment. Same thing when I'm climbing something really intense or descending something really intense as a mountain biker or a snowboarder. I have found that that's when I'm actually doing my best meditating. I actually found that worked best for me. But I really do think that anybody who's wanting to add things to their lives that are likely to help their their mental health, exercise, and some version of meditation for them are can't miss
Very interesting you
solutions.
said that. It's only come up a few times, and it's something I resonate with too, where you get in these meditative states where your mind is as like in the gym, especially when if you went to the gym and it's I'm like you said, nowhere else. I'm locked in. And I think having the form of meditation that works for you is such a good thing to bring up. So thank you for sharing that. What's next for you?
I've told people in past interviews, I deeply believe in the power of goal setting. I think goal setting is human magic. And I do think that people should be honest about their goals because a lot of goals are externally are influenced by their sort of societal influence rather than an authentic influence. For example, people go through life and decide they're going to get married or they're going to have kids or they're going to buy a house or they're going to retire or save for retirement and so on. And I'm not sure how many people actually ask themselves the question if each of their goals are actually authentically theirs or if it's society just sort of dictating the goals to them. Nonetheless, I wrote two life plans where I articulated my life goals in my 20s and in my 30s. And I'm now in my 50s and I have actually achieved all of my life goals. I have no goals left to achieve. My only goal in life now, and so my answer to your question will always be for the rest of my life, my goal is to help other people achieve their goals, articulate their goals and achieve their goals. So that's where I am now and forever. And that's what I will be doing this year.
And I think it's so inspiring to hear you say that. There's something with actually writing your goals down on paper, you're putting it into action, you're forcing it. What was the biggest bucket list goal that you recently accomplished?
Well, I recently accomplished. I wanted to build a house from the ground up, truly design every inch of the home. And I designed I'm really into modernism, and so I designed a modernist masterpiece. That was probably the last formal goal that I'd written down that I ultimately achieved. And I'm not sure I'm going to write down goals going forward for myself, as I just said. But one prior to that, which was a real unlock for me, was I had a financial planning practice that was very successful, but then I opened a restaurant. And I opened one restaurant, and now I have a restaurant company with 250 employees that's a side project of mine. I'm executive chairman of, and we have, it's a super successful company, but it was just a side hustle, and it was a life goal that I had to scratch an itch to do. So that would be an example of one of the goals that I'm really proud of.
Hey, you got to segue that into stay tuned for that entrepreneur show coming out with this guy, David. Thank you so much for spending another 30 minutes with me. It's great to see you again. Where can we find you online?
My background's weird. So I created a David Steele website. It's David Steele, DavidSteele.xyz.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I've got some great show notes for everyone I typed up as we went along. The self-actualization and base needs, the challenges from growing up in that situation to thriving, having his own financial practice, now a series of restaurants, that flash in his late 20s that changed his life. Maybe the episode title. I haven't decided yet, but I love how vividly you shared that because I walked it right through you with you, excuse me. Everyone, be sure to check out David online. Leave us a review, rate the show, a comment, let him know how much you liked him today. The show is on all podcast platforms, all social media platforms, and my name is Vincent A. Lancy. You can Google me and learn about my website, podcasts, all the great things I'm up to. And today's show is brought to you by Coming Alive Podcast Production. They just released their first course in the university. Head to comingalive podcastproduction.com to get started today. But with that, thank you so much.
Thank you.